welcome to On the House Movie Podcast and Reviews, where we took a look at video games, movies, or TV shows, because hey, whatever we want to talk about's on the house. Joining me today is Matthew.
Hello.
And Dave.
Hey.
Yes, folks, welcome to the first edition of the All Guys episode of this podcast. It just kind of happened that way. We did not plan this at all. Well, today's movie is one I'm really excited to talk about. It's actually my favorite horror film, but because it was Matt's pick, let's have him get us started.
Okay, so today we are covering the movie The Thing, the 1982 version. This is by far my favorite horror movie and probably my favorite movie in general. It's about an alien ship that crashed in the ice hundreds of thousands of years ago, and some people discover it and blew up the ice around it, after which the alien unfreezes and starts imitating any living being that it touches. So no one knows who is human or not. Everyone has to be on guard against all the people they know at all times. Let's get into this, guys.
Yeah. Well, Dave, what's your thoughts on the movie in general?
For me, I saw this one not until my 20s, but I can really appreciate the atmosphere and the acting, and the setting is rather unique, and I can understand why the film has obtained the legacy it has. It's not personally my favorite of Carpenter's. That's still Halloween, but I can see why it's you guys' favorites.
And Clancy, your thoughts?
Like I said, this is my absolute favorite horror movie. It's my favorite Carpenter film. It's my favorite Kurt Russell role. Just everything about this movie works, in my opinion. I mean, you're always constantly guessing who's the thing and who isn't. And this film does such a good job of misleading you that every single time you watch I watch the film again, I'm trying to go, okay, is he infected there or is he not infected? And it just has so much rewatchability. I could gush about this film all day, and that's probably what's going to happen over the course of this podcast.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
Well,
I must agree with Clancy, though. It is definitely, it's my favorite movie. I've probably watched this movie upwards of 200 times.
How old were you guys when you first saw this?
Well, Clancy's 4 years older than me, so how old were you, Clancy? And then I'll piggyback off of that.
I think I was driving at the time, so I might have been 16 or something.
That makes me 12.
Yeah. You're welcome. I think I introduced you to all the horror films, basically.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
Deal. Well, folks,
I'm trying to think of something else to say, but without giving anything away, I don't know if I can.
Yeah. So, folks, as you can tell, we absolutely love this movie and think you should check it out. Though I will say, do not watch the piece of garbage prequel that came out a few years ago under the same name. I couldn't even make it through the whole film. That's how bad that thing is.
I watched it through, but man, it was garbage.
I mean, if there's anything I can say, I mean, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is always a win, so...
That's true, but a good actress can only do so much with a bad script.
And while we're still in the non-spoiler section of this, as inconsequential as this is for a movie, I love the title card to this one.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we covered all we can without going into spoilers. This is obviously a pretty spoiler-heavy movie, as you spend pretty much the whole film trying to figure out who done it in a sense. So let's just skip on to the spoiler section.
Okay, so Dave, who was first infected?
Her first, okay, I'm sometimes I don't think about that early on. I just go with Bennings first because that's how we ended up. But maybe Palmer came earlier.
It was Palmer.
Yeah.
The dog goes into his room before he gets put away. and they don't show anything that happened in that room, it was definitely Palmer.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Palmer was the thing the whole time. What was your favorite part of the movie, Dave?
I kind of like Blair's rampage early on, and
Yeah, that's pretty good.
and also because I looked up trivia on this, for his part they wanted to get Donald Pleasance, and I would have loved to see that.
Oh really?
Yeah. And also like the blood test scene.
Yeah, that's hard to beat. I mean, for me, what I love about this movie is that all the characters feel like characters.
They
There's
do.
there's not one guy where I would go, okay, he's the red shirt of this movie. Like, they got a great crew for this one, and apparently the entire crew were really good friends with each other.
Yes, we covered this last night. That's right.
Yeah.
But I was going to let you say that.
Yeah, really good friends with each other while they were filming this, and to be able to take a good friendship and just turn it into on screen, they're very hostile towards each other even before the thing attacks. They're already uneasy with each other. I mean, the very first scene, what I kind of love about it with our main crew is you see most of the cast in the rec room, and then you see McCready just off by himself in his own personal room, just drinking some scotch and playing a chess game. And this
he didn't want to
immediately,
be around anyone.
huh?
He didn't want to be around anyone.
Yeah, but it immediately puts in your head that okay, he's the outcast of the group, without having to spell it out like modern movies would go. Oh, there would be a conversation of, oh yeah, he's off in his room by himself again. You know how he hates everyone.
And it's shown very well how he just, that covers it pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
How he just wants to be alone. Like, even after the thing came there, all he had to say was, I just want to go up to my room and get drunk.
Yeah.
That's it. And Clancy, because your favorite part is my favorite part, what is your favorite part?
Matthew, it's been a long day, and I know we've all gone through a lot. But when you get the opportunity, if you wouldn't mind untying me from this fucking couch!
We shall say it correctly this time. I know you gentlemen have been through a lot. But when you can find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!
I love this entire movie, but for other scenes that I absolutely love, I love the scene with Blair when he's just piecing stuff together, and then he kind of has a light bulb moment of, oh shit, there's no good way this is going to turn out, and he just loses it completely. So just watching his character arc from going probably the most rational person to fully losing it, threatening to shoot anyone who came near him, it's just so well handled.
I like when Child goes around to the back door and is like, Blair, just calm down. I'll kill you! And just uses all of his bullets at the wall.
Yeah.
And I also really love the defibrillator scene.
Oh yeah, that's such a good scene.
That scene is is an incredibly well made scene, which gets into how they made that scene with like melted plastic and bubble gum. There was no CGI.
Yeah, this was pre-CGI. Everything you saw was done in camera. It's probably got some of the absolute best effects in a movie ever.
On top of that, there is only actually one scene where the actual background doesn't really look 100, like you could tell it's a staged background, and that's when they're at the ship.
Yeah.
That's the only time that it actually looks like a staged background. Because, well, you're not going to find that anywhere.
No, I mean, it's a great matte painting, don't get me wrong, but you can tell.
Yeah, it's just a little faded.
Yeah.
And a little upright. But it was definitely very, very well painted.
Mm-hmm. Which I believe that artist went on to do, is also in a lot of other things. I'm trying to remember his name. Give me a second there. But while we're talking about this, so this movie's actually based on a book called Who Goes There? Which very similar timeline and story as this particular one. I haven't read it myself, but I've read descriptions of what's in it, so it's fairly close. The general premise is carried over. And it was actually a movie before this called The Thing from the Other World, which was one of John Carpenter's absolute favorite films. That's why you see it playing in the original Halloween. That's his nod to this movie had a big impact in me. It doesn't really do the body snatching thing so much as big hulking alien creature chasing people. But for the time and for what it is, it's a good movie, but this one just overshadows it now because it's so well done.
You can definitely tell that film had a huge impact on his life
Mm-hmm.
when he made this one. You looking for the artist still?
Yeah.
Well, just looking up some trivia, there's a lot of interesting names were almost cast in this.
Oh, yeah?
Like for Mac, they wanted and this is just some of them: Eastwood, Ford, Jeff Bridges, Scott Glenn, Nick Nolte, Christopher Walken.
Wow.
They definitely went right with Kurt Russell.
Let's see, with Childs, they almost had Isaac Hayes, Ernie Hudson, or Carl Weathers.
I can't see somebody just replacing Keith David, but man, I'd really be curious to know what Weathers' interpretation would have been.
Apparently, of those names, Hudson almost got it, but Keith David just managed to win it out.
Yeah,
I
can see why, though.
They were considering for both Fuchs and Palmer Alec Baldwin.
What'd you say?
For both either Fuchs or Palmer, they were considering Alec Baldwin.
Really?
And before we go much further, another guy who was considered for the role that Kurt Russell got cast in was Chris Christopherson.
Mm-hmm. And like I said earlier, Donald Pleasance was considered for Blair, which I would have liked seeing after he was already in Halloween. Just seeing Dr. Loomis fall out, lose his mind.
So I can't complain about the guy about Welford. The guy's just good.
Did you guys notice? So, sorry, this is a little bit different from what you were talking about. It just kind of came to my mind. Where did the keys go?
They disappear there for a while.
Windows.
Oh, he
dropped him on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Oh, yeah.
That's something that you forget about throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But his name tells Windows to go grab the keys from Gary. So he does. He comes back and he's getting taken over. So he drops the keys on the ground and runs.
Mm-hmm.
Then the keys are gone. So the thing had the keys the whole time.
Right. That happens early in the movie.
And being that Palmer was the first one, he had to be the first one because he was the only perfect imitation until it came to the time his blood was tested.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the first one. So Palmer had the keys after that, most likely.
Gotcha.
I literally came up with that last night while I was watching the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And even before the era of it being commonplace to have home computers, this was the first Mac and Windows conflict.
Oh, really?
Get it?
That took me a minute.
That's pretty good. That's cheesy, but really good.
I kind of took that from like the Dead Meat, but I tried it.
I'm bowing down to you on that one. That was a good
That was
joke.
good.
I took that from somewhere else, but it's an amazing coincidence.
Like, I was trying to connect the two between the keys, and then all of a sudden that comment, like, what the hell is going on here? That's good.
Thank you.
So, one thing I really love about this movie is the score. It just has this. It's not a grand orchestral score by any means. It's just a very chilling, cut to the bone type score. Which that, along with just the general setting, you feel the cold in this movie. You feel the isolation. You feel the hopelessness so well.
And personally, in real life, I hate the cold, so that makes it extra terrifying.
Yeah. Alaska Man, how do you feel on that?
You can definitely feel the cold in the movie.
Yeah.
And unlike Dave, cold does not terrify me. I actually love it because you can always put on another layer. But yes, I agree with you, Clancy. It does. You can feel the temperature in the movie while you're going throughout the movie, just because nobody wants to go outside.
No.
And they spend as
constantly
little time
about-
outside as possible.
Mhm. Like, I know the one scene that really sticks out to me about how cold it is when McCready, he has the guideline cut on him and he has to find his way in the dark.
Oh, yeah.
And he's only out there for a couple minutes, and when you see him next, he breaks through a window in order to get in. He is near death desperation at that moment.
Yep. Like, he's so cold that he is white. He's white and he's pissed off.
So one thing I briefly want to touch on is what's your guys' favorite effect in the movie?
I'll let Dave go first. I got my answer already, though.
Well, I like the spider thing at one point.
Oh, dang it. You took mine. That was my favorite, too, for special effects. That was really cool.
For me, obviously, I love that scene with the spider head. It's by far the most iconic. But the one scene that really gets to me is towards the end where Blair's obviously the thing at this point, and he attacks one of the other human remaining cast members.
He attacks Gary.
Yeah. And what he does is he sticks his hand inside his mouth, and you can see him just stretching the mouth and jaw open farther than it was ever meant to be. And as someone who hates going to the dentist, I just hate the idea of objects in my mouth, so that one gets to me.
Did you see what happens afterwards?
Yes.
He carries him away with his hand still in his mouth.
I know, it's so creepy.
That's so unsanitary.
So unsanitary. That's the take on this.
Yes, I mean, this is actually a great example of why you need to keep social distancing. At first,
6
only one
feet
of them
apart,
was
so you don't
infected.
shove your hand in somebody else's mouth.
And if you get infected, just burn them.
I'll go get my flamethrower. Another thing I really like in this movie is the use of the color red and blue. They're very contrasting colors. And a lot of the times in the scene where they use them, blue's a cold color. It's somewhat of a calming color, but in this one it just feels uncomfortable. While the color red signifies the thing. For example, in the scene where Blair's inside the house and McCready's talking to him, and you can figure out at that point that he's infected because there's a hangman's noose behind him. but he's saying, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm all better now. Let me out." So at some point he was getting ready to hang himself, but then someone came in and infected him.
Yep.
What they did with the light is on half the screen it's blue and you see McCready, and on the other half you see inside the window and it's the red flare light on it, looking at Blair. And it's just a subtle way of hinting to the audience there's difference between them now.
I think I recall reading somewhere that, like, as a subtle hint for the audience you wouldn't catch on your first viewing, is that for the infected people and the non-infected, they would, like, shoot their eyes a little differently. Like, there'd be a gleam to one, but not the others.
Yeah, I think I've heard that too.
I've never really noticed it though. I just kind of figured it out with clues.
Mm-hmm.
And
I know when they were making this movie, something the cast and director spent a lot of time talking about was, if you were infected, did you know you were infected?
oh, that also kind of gets along the point that I just remembered that I was trying to remember. So with Blair at that scene that we were talking about, where he's sitting there with the noose behind him and whatnot, and he's saying that he's all better now and whatnot. McCready asks about Fuchs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "It's not Fuchs." The Thing at that moment realized he made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew he was screwed.
Yeah, for sure.
Although he changed his tone immediately after that.
One thing I will say that I kind of want to see a parallel universe where this scene happens is the thought of Blair driving that little spacecraft off somewhere.
He'd have to get it out of the ice first because that went way down below the ice.
Well, I'm sure he could transform into some giant dog-like creature thing and bust out of it.
Dog-like thing that has human heads and dog heads and random alien heads pop out of it.
Which is something I appreciate in this movie is you never see the pure form of the creature. You see hints
what
of...
is the pure form?
Exactly. We don't know.
What is it? What did it start out as? That is a huge question. What did it start out as?
Yeah,
what
exactly.
the hell was it?
I mean, you can definitely see where Stranger Things got some influence from with the Demogorgon.
Oh, yeah.
The mouth, kind of the flower-like mouth thing opening.
Oh, not only that, they actually pay tribute to the Thing throughout the whole series because there's a poster of the Thing throughout the whole series in the background.
So do you think if this had been a big hit back in '82, they would have, like, franchised it instantly?
Probably. Because originally it bombed because it came out like the week after E.T. and people were wanting a happy alien movie, not a super depressing one.
Super, like, sci-fi alien shit is way better than happy alien movies. Happy alien movies, I mean, they don't suck, but they're not nearly as entertaining.
I like
and they're
E.T.,
not nearly as
definitely
they're not as intriguing because there's not as much trying to figure out what's going on, while at the same time being able to figure out what's going on and keeping you intrigued in it.
I mean, this is like probably one of the go-to examples of a film that found its audience long after the theatrical run.
Yeah, for sure.
True.
I mean, it's like Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz wasn't initially the huge hit. It was kind of a sleeper at first. But now it's gained such popularity, you just assume, looking back, that this took Hollywood by storm.
No, I can actually see why the Thing didn't take, like, super popularity right off the bat. Because you have to think about the movie. Like, when you watch it, you have to think. You can't just, like, zone off for a second and know where you're at if you're watching it for the first time.
Like, I read that if this had been a hit, like, Carpenter would have been the one to direct Firestarter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Actually, I kind of feel bad for Carpenter over the course because, like, some of his best movies ended up being financial bombs. So I kind of want to see the parallel universe where he had hits and was able to get the funding for some of the projects he wasn't able to do, you know?
Well, technically, he had like a 3 film contract with Universal, but after this one underperformed, they bought him out of it.
Yeah. And yet he's still known as today as one of the best as film directors of the horror genre.
I know, like,
But that's because
The
he
Thing
is.
and Halloween are the go-to examples, but I also really liked his Christine.
Yeah, Christine's good. I haven't seen it in probably about 10 years, but I do like that.
I haven't even seen Christine, so I'll have to watch that one
at some point.
Well, I'm gonna probably watch it now that I know.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna watch it here very soon.
I absolutely love They Live. It's not a horror film, but that is one of my favorite movies as well.
I'll admit, like, I got more into. I followed Craven's filmography more than Carpenter's. I see why a lot of people really love Carpenter.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's really, there's no competition in who you like the best. It's just whatever style works for you, you know?
Mm-hmm. So, question, Dave.
I know where you're going, but go on.
Who's the thing at the end?
I'm of two minds of this. I mean, it's okay to like two answers, like if I go back and forth between them.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to hear both. I want to hear both answers. Yes.
I'm either of the camp that they're actually both fine and neither of them are the thing, or I'm actually going with, like, I think Child's human, but Mac's not.
Now, why would you say that? I want to hear the explanation for that one.
Well, just maybe this is just how I. Because if they wanted it to be ambiguous, just the way Child just happens to show up, that's too obvious, like, of a lead towards one way that I'm thinking it's just him. Because I'm thinking Child's is fine just because that's way too obvious. Oh, hey, I'm here now.
I can see where you're coming from with that.
I can. I have to respectfully disagree, but I can definitely see where you're coming from. And why do you think they're both fine?
Just because, like, I'll make the ending, like, just tragically ironic. Like, maybe it is over, but they're doomed anyway.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. Oh, I personally think, and I know that Clancy agrees with me, Child's is the thing.
Yeah.
Because McCready, they tried to frame McCready the whole time, right? But they couldn't actually follow through with it.
Like,
when
stolen clothes, I think they did
not
one
only
other thing.
that, well, yeah. So when the stolen clothes things pops up, right? So McCready is deathly freezing at the moment when he gets back into the house. Later in the story, Blair, he's wearing a long sleeve t-shirt in this freezing fucking weather, and he's not even blinking an eye. And he was the Thing. So the Thing doesn't feel cold very easy, right? Can't be McCready at that point. His clothes were already ripped up, so he was framed right there. Now, fast forward even more. Child spent hours out in the freezing, and probably about an hour. But even after McCready is freezing for 5 minutes, he's almost dead by the time that he breaks in that window. So if Childs goes out there for an hour, Blair caught up with him at some point, because he's not freezing by the time that he gets over to McCready.
And for me, two pieces I'll add on that are what kind of make me for sure believe it. One is that you see McCready's breath and Child's breath. It's a close up on him, and they very purposely show he doesn't have his breath showing in the cold. And two, throughout the last act of the movie, they're using Molotov cocktails. So
I knew this was gonna come up.
yeah,
I was gonna bring it up afterwards, but yes.
yeah. So I believe at the end what he gave Childs to drink was actually a Molotov cocktail. He just took out the part you light on fire, the fuse. So that's why when Childs hands it back to him, he gives kind of that little subtle smile.
He didn't even hand it back.
Oh, right. He just gives that subtle smile.
He just gives a subtle smile, lays his head back, and lays down.
Yeah,
and just like leans against that board and whatnot, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't even want the bottle back because he just, yep.
Because at that point they both
At
know
that point they're
dead.
both screwed. So
I mean, like the issue with like any interpretation you go with is both are doomed anyway.
Yeah,
right. Both are doomed anyway, so it doesn't really matter who it was.
Mm-hmm.
It's just for self-argument.
I will say
it is kind of funny.
Yeah. I will say there was one edit of the film they showed on TV where the last scene is actually you see a husky running off into the distance, which I'm glad is not in the main version because it's so much more terrifying not knowing if they got it, not knowing if this thing's gonna be found, his body found and taken back out, or if it's over, they won.
This is a perfect example between people that disagree on the ending. It's an everlasting question.
Yeah.
It's an everlasting question. That's what this film provided, an everlasting question.
So hypothetical. What if, like, one day in an interview, Carpenter just flat out said what's supposed to be the truth? How would you respond?
How would I respond? Well, pretty much exactly how I told you. But you'd obviously tell him the same thing that you just told me. So which would he choose?
I mean, I would
That's
say
still an everlasting question. Because you do have some good points, and I do appreciate your opinion. I just disagree with it.
Well, I mean, like, even if it was
about this movie, I like
Carpenter he said it was the interpretation you go with. Like, would you say that means the question's settled? There's nothing more to discuss.
No, there's definitely a lot to discuss.
And like one actually a point I saw brought up somewhere is that just as in terms of how the thing works, like if two people are infected at the same time, would they be aware of the other is infected?
I would have to say yes, because Palmer and what's the guy that turned into a spider?
Shoot.
I forgot his name. Anyway, yeah. Palmer straight up pointed out that the thing was getting away so he could survive. Palmer had been the thing for a good long time at that point. He was a fully developed thing before anybody could know it.
That's true.
Because the thing just showed up. Nobody knew what was going on. He was the first victim. The dogs were more of a distraction than anything. It didn't it's exactly like Blair said. It didn't want to be a dog.
Yeah, it wanted to get to where it could take over the camp and then.
So I would have to say yes. A thing could identify another thing because it would use itself as a distraction because it can multiply. If it kills off itself at one point, it can multiply somewhere else with a distraction, which is why all of them were gone at the end besides the thing and the person. Or the other possibility, they killed it. I doubt it. Highly doubt it.
Because here's another reason I doubt it, because when they're doing the blood test, you see the infected blood kind of scurries off on its own, and you never see them hunt it down or burn it.
Oh, I know. They're too distracted by Palmer.
Yeah, so that's why I think that's how Childs most likely got infected.
That's
Like it,
that's actually a pretty good point too.
yeah.
But then again, on Dave's side, I can see how that would get to McCready too, because the whole time he is trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to figure out the flamethrower that whole time. Like, why the hell isn't this thing working? I can tell you why it's not working. It's been running for a good long time, and flamethrowers don't have that much fuel in them.
Well, that's part of the reason why I said earlier why I'm almost on the side of like Childs being human is that I feel like if you wanted it to be ambiguous, just like what the way he just shows up, though, you're too obviously going one way, like is what you're implying. Like, yeah. I feel if they wanted it to be ambiguous, they should have dropped like something that could have been seen more as a clear clue towards Mac being the thing. But
I can like I said before, I can definitely see both sides. My opinion, though, is that Childs is the thing.
Which is why
I am at that conclusion in my own mind.
Which is why with movies like this, I hate it when the directors come out and say, no, this is what it is, and the other interpretation is wrong. I like it when they trust their audience to be smart enough to figure it out, to come up with their own conclusions, because there's a point with art, just like with books or music or whatever, where the author has to let go of their creation, and it's now belongs to the audience.
And exactly. I just want the cat from Coraline to still be a good guy, you know.
I didn't quite hear you there. Go ahead, man.
The cat from Coraline to still be a good guy, you know.
Okay. Have you guys got anything else?
I really hope that the truth is never actually revealed on this film.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
And even if
because
they were
it brings up great conversations.
Yeah. And even if they were to do a sequel at this point, like, it's been so long that it wouldn't be Carpenter's vision, and therefore I don't think anyone would count it as canon, you know?
Though I hear they want to do, like, a remake of this.
They did the prequel, and that was good enough to no longer try to fuck with it.
Yeah. Here's the thing, if it was just taking the general concept, okay, but if you try to recreate a story beat for beat, I just don't have interest in the remake. Like, good remakes to me are like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where, okay, here's the cool concept. Let's take it and explore this angle with this.
Right.
Versus, let's do the same movie all over again.
Or, like, this movie is even pretty much an example of a remake that's effectively replaced the original.
Oh, yeah.
Very effectively.
Yeah, and going on that, it's like, remaking something just because it has a name attached to it, I'm not a fan of. So, for me, it's gotta be something you think you can take a different angle at. You love the concept, but think it needs an updating. Or it's based on a book or something, and you want to do something a little closer to the book. Kind of like what they did here, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, just for, like, hypothetical, like, if you were to, like, have to do another version of this, like, what would you personally do differently?
I'm gonna have to take a second, and you might have to edit out while I think. Like,
yeah,
that's quite the question right there. Because I don't know if I'd change anything. That's the thing. It was made so well to the audience perspective, not to the director's perspective. It was made for the audience, and you can tell because there's so much mystery and so much confusion about it.
You know, one thing I might do just to give it a totally different twist is have McCready be a thing throughout the entire film, but they never confirm it. It's just kind of like a last minute, you see maybe a glimmer in his eyes or something. That wouldn't be so much to improve it, but to give it a totally different angle. That's the only thing I can really think of right now.
Like if I had to do like a different twist on it, like maybe I would have it so like it even when somebody's infected, it doesn't like do full complete transformations, like make it almost a slasher.
You know, that
could work.
there is one thing that I think that it would make the film more interesting is if they left one Norwegian in there just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Because they can't communicate with each other, but the Norwegian already knows what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it would just add more confusion to the group, right?
Yeah.
More tension.
They tried kind of doing that with the language barrier in the prequel, but
they didn't do it very well.
Something and they failed.
They didn't do that very well.
No, they didn't.
That's a very like I said, it's a possibility of something that I might add, but it's a very tough line to walk.
Yeah, for me, it's like I can't see improving the film as it is, so I just went with okay, if I was forced gun to my head to do a different angle at it, this is what I'd do.
How do you guys feel about the dog suit?
What?
I think that scene's absolutely terrifying. Not so much the transformation. I'll be honest, I've watched this film so many times that I'm slowly realizing how numb I am to blood effects in movies because my wife will walk into the room and go, "What the beep beep are you watching?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, thanks an alien shoots a ton of blood out," and just not fazed by it anymore. But what terrifies me with that scene is when the husky's biting the cage open, trying to escape.
Oh my goodness! You can feel that scene.
Yeah, like
you can really feel that scene. Like you have to be completely terrified to rip out your teeth biting out a chain link fence.
Yeah, it's like amount of terror, like pure animalistic terror, that would take a creature to do that. Oh, it's just terrifying.
I also did like it's horrible, but I did like the scene where the tentacles grab the dog.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there's no CGI.
Yeah. And
that was literally props and shit that they used. Props and stuff. Sorry, you can edit that out.
Matt, we've been saying fuck a lot in this podcast. I don't think it matters if we say shit.
But no, that scene really does get to me because that had to take a lot of effort.
Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I mean, the F word's in one of the most iconic lines of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's. I will say also on the dog scene is for those of you who don't know, my dog actually sits down and watches TV. And when the thing started transforming that dog scene, he just started growling and barking at it like, "You stay away from my brother!" And well, folks, we're real quickly just going to dive into our final thoughts. I mean, I think you pretty well know what we're going to say about it, but let's go ahead and get started. Dave, you go ahead.
As I've said, it's not my favorite Carpenter movie, but it's very atmospheric. It's a good mystery in its own way, and the gore effects are amazing, and a good cast. And I can appreciate it's like the only major Arctic themed horror movie I can think of. So definitely check us out if you haven't already.
I have to fully recommend this movie myself. Well, one, it's my favorite movie, and by far my favorite horror movie, like we covered in the intro. But I really like the effect that it just leaves you on a hanger. Who is it? Is it still there? Is it not there? Which of the two is left? Either way, they're both doomed, though.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I fully recommend watching this movie. Like I said, I've seen it probably 200 plus times. And I learn something new every single time I see it.
Definitely a rewatchable movie. As for me, like I said, it's my favorite Carpenter film and it's my favorite horror film, which, with the sheer amount of volume in both those categories, for me to put it as my favorite, it has to be good. It has to be amazing. This is a film where, even if you watch it and don't like it, if you decide you don't like the gore or something, it will stick with you. You will not forget this movie. It's not exposable horror film 319. It's a movie that will remain with you, and I watch this probably a couple times a year, and it's one of 3 films that are mandatory Halloween watching viewings for me.
Did you hear how apparently, like, at an actual Arctic base in Antarctica, they routinely show this movie?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
like it's an annual thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, folks, we just want to thank you for joining us today. As always, thanks for watching. And if you want to see more of our podcasts, we're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. We also have a Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram account, so you can look us up there. And if you want to leave us a like, follow, comment, whatever, it just helps us get more exposure for our podcast. But before we go, a little tease for next week. It's my pick this next week, and I just want to say, if you grew up playing a Nintendo, specifically a Super Nintendo, I'm about to show you a whole new world. Hi folks, Clancy here. Just want to hop on real quick before you guys click off and just say a little message that I like ending these videos with every single time, and that's just a message on mental health, and that if you're out there struggling, which there's so many reasons why you would be right now, to not give up the fight, to push on for one more day, because I promise you, it may take a while, but it will eventually get better. I've been at the point where I've wanted to completely give up in my life, but I kept struggling and kept fighting. Even sometimes I didn't want to. I had to spend some time in the hospital just to get me in the right state of mind before I could even go to my own house and sleep without being a threat to myself. And my wish, if I could grant it to the entire world, is that nobody else has to suffer like that. It's not a fate I'd wish on my worst enemy. But if you are in the position where you struggle with this, just remember, it's not your fault. Our brain chemicals do things that we can't control sometimes. But if you ever do need the help, the suicide prevention number is 1-800-273-8255. Again, it's 1-800-273-8255. You're not alone in this battle. 1 in 4 adults suffer from mental health. It's time we end the stigma and raise awareness. and welcome to On the House Podcasts and Reviews. The place where... Man, 9 seconds in and out.
Beautiful.